America decides what it's going to do about it, and it's quite clear listening to George Bush, he's not just going to go after who's responsible, but whoever is harbouring them. How are they going to do that?
Well, all bets are off, the gloves are off. The United States, in effect, is now saying there is going to be no such thing as conditional support for the United States. You either support the United States unreservedly, or you're an enemy of the United States. And this idea of anyone who supplied comfort, support, help to anyone who did this is now an enemy of the United States. I don't think anything has been ruled out. No system in the American arsenal will be ruled out for use against whoever did this.
The difficulty, looking at everybody's talking about pilot training and aspects of this attack like that, it's not as hard as everybody assumes.
Aircraft nowadays can almost fly themselves. If you talk to any civilian pilots, what they point out is taking off from Heathrow, let us say, to fly to New York, you program a computer and the pilots almost manage the systems. Yes, if something goes wrong, they're there to fly the aircraft, but you can program an aircraft to, for the sake of argument, take off from Boston and crash into the World Trade Center. And if you wanted to train for it, we heard there Eric Moody talking about using simulators to train up. There are several systems you can buy on the high street to load onto a PC, and contact of mine has already programmed one of these standard flight simulators to replicate a training mission to fly into the World Trade Center, because they are that accurate. You could have done this anywhere all over the world, so your people are familiar with the controls of a 767, the controls of a 747. And this is just things you can buy in stores, in Tottenham Court Road, anywhere in the world.
These targets, America's financial and military might, brought into question by this terrorist attack, and as such, it has to be said, it has been a success.
It has been a massive success as a terrorist attack. The fact that no one has claimed responsibility, well, at one level that has reinforced the impact of it being a terrorist attack. No one knows exactly where the attack has come from, where they should be looking for any potential follow-up attacks. Yes, this is the, hard to say it, the perfect terrorist attack. It has caused mass panic in the United States, around the world, dislocation of the Western economy, you name it.
Francis Tusa, for now, thank you.
And talking of dislocation also to passengers and flights in and out of the country here, of course, and security has indeed been tightened at UK airports almost as soon as the news of yesterday's attacks first broke. There are still no transatlantic flights, we believe, and other aircraft can leave Britain, but only if maximum security is guaranteed, and they're banned from crossing central London. Sky's Gary Cottrell currently at Heathrow Airport for us, and let's talk to him now, particularly about UK domestic flights. Gary, the domestic passenger infiltration angle now clearly very important in the story in the US. What about the situation here?
Well, the airport is beginning to look more normal. Obviously, there's extra security. BAA airports, that's Heathrow here and Gatwick being the two biggest, are on a state of official red alert. That means extra policing, not particularly more high profile, but more of them, more announcements over the intercom warning about disbanded cars, disbanded luggage. And of course, there's people lying because they've got nowhere to go. There's lots of pressure on hotels, and security staff at buildings surrounding the airport are a lot more aware and a lot more high profile. 140 flights are on their way from Europe to the US when this happened yesterday afternoon, and a lot of them turned back if they were not beyond the point of no return, i.e. if they hadn't got halfway or more and didn't have the fuel to turn back. Those who didn't have the fuel to turn back carried on and were diverted to airports elsewhere. So it was, as you can imagine, all night there's been pressure on hotels, pressure on people trying to find somewhere to stay. Today things are beginning to get back to normal as people heed warnings not to come to the airport. No flights to the US or Canada for at least 48 hours, and of course there'll be knock-on effects to other routes as well.
Gary, just how complex an operation was it, literally to you know, batten down the hatches and close the airport and reroute planes yesterday?
Well, obviously a complex operation, but an operation which people are trained for. And it was helped, as I say, by this awareness among passengers that they shouldn't come to the airport if they hadn't already set out, and the patience among passengers who were either at the airport waiting to meet and greet or waiting to take off, And of course, for passengers who found themselves after 2.5, 3 hours, 4 hours in the air, coming back to where they started. Looking at what happened in the United States, nobody really is complaining. People are accepting that it's something that's beyond the control of the authorities. They're being patient, and they're being told, for example, by ABTA, the Association of British Travel Agents, that if their plans are affected or cancelled, as far as the next 7 days are concerned, as far in the Washington, the US, Washington and New York areas, they can have full refunds, or they can make alternative arrangements at no extra cost to themselves.
Gary at Heathrow Airport, thanks very much.
Well, let's get a reaction now from the Middle East, and our Middle East correspondent Andrew Wilson is in Jerusalem. Andrew, just looking once again at these pictures, no doubt the reaction there, the same as around the world, shock and outrage, and fingers are being pointed certainly in America at Osama bin Laden. Is that the same where you are?
I think there's two reactions we have to look at here in the Middle East, Simon. One of them is that Yasser Arafat, I think, was the first leader to go on the record and go on television to condemn the attacks and to offer his condolences to the American people and the families of the people killed in this outrageous attack. He was followed swiftly by not appearances but also written comments from other extremist groups like Hamas and also other leaders around the Middle East, Egypt and the Gulf states, have all been quick to say that they condemn this outrageous terror attack, and no doubt as the shock wears off here as well as in the United States and the facts become clearer, the leaderships in the different Arab nations here will only confirm their condemnation of the extent and the size and the outrage of such a soft target being struck in such a devastating way. But the political fallout, of course, will be different in the analysis.
Here we are, 18 hours on. We seem to have someone in Osama bin Laden who people are, as I say, pointing the finger at. There will now inevitably be a period of mourning, a period that is already underway, I know where you are. And then there's going to be the anger. There's going to be the need to find someone to blame and for retribution. Now, what's the feeling in the Middle East about how America may do that?
Well, I think Israel feels it's bonded its partnership in grief with America as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible. Flags are flying at half-mast in all the state buildings here. It's declared a good day of mourning, as you said. It's closed its borders to outsiders for 24 hours. It's mimicked everything that the United States has done. And that will create a feeling of solidarity that the Israelis will be quick to exploit in the near future when the Americans start hunting for perpetrators and seeking their assistance in doing so. Now, every international attack on a soft American target in the last 5 years, as I can remember, has resulted in the first finger always being pointed roughly in the direction of Afghanistan and roughly in the direction of Osama bin Laden. In fact, there were some gunfire over Kabul last night, which people at first thought may be a preemptive strike by the United States, but it was quickly denied by the State Department, so we can discount that at the moment. Now, Osama bin Laden hasn't claimed responsibility for this attack, and nor has anybody connected with him. In fact, the government in Kabul, the Taliban government, has said as far as they're concerned, they don't connect him with it. But he is the only known name in the world at the moment that has the kind of network that could perhaps carry off this kind of attack. He has perhaps 60 different countries where he has bases and many more where he has contacts and safe houses that his people and his operators can use. So that will be the first finger will be pointing in that direction. However, the Israelis will also be encouraging the Americans using their intelligence and the intelligence gathered from other intelligence agencies that operate in this area, particularly the British and the French, that such an operation as large as the one carried out yesterday in the United States, with 4 different planes being hijacked simultaneously and 3 different targets, or at least 2 different targets, but 3 different strikes simultaneously carried out, does need an awful lot of support and an awful lot of logistical planning. And they'll be looking at things like diplomatic bags, at things like embassies that may be shielding people in terms of equipment or communications. And they may have to look further than an individual. And Israeli intelligence may well be suggesting that they have to look further into perhaps a particular state-sponsored operation rather than an individually sponsored operation. And of course that leads us back into the terrible war word that America has made it quite clear it's prepared to enter into should it find a country responsible rather than an individual.
Andrew, we'll be talking to you a little later. For now, thank you. We're going to, as you can see, we're getting live pictures in from New York, from our sister station Fox News. Let's just listen in to hear how they're covering this disaster.
Giuliani believes that there are survivors under there, and that is why they have sent doctors down there to treat them right away. So once again, you know, this is one of those situations where you can't speculate, but you hope for the best, and they are ready for whatever they have to face. Outside of St. Vincent's Hospital, I'm Derry Alexander. Back to you, Rick and Lori.
All right, Derry, thanks very much for that update.
All right, and some new developments at the Pentagon, also the target of today's attack.
That's right. Let's go now to Brian Wilson, who has been there live for us all.
Well, that's how Fox News is covering events as they develop in New York. We were talking to Andrew Wilson, our Middle East correspondent, who's still with us. Andrew, one of the more sickening aspects of the reaction we saw